The power of strategic disappearance. In a world obsessed with visibility, disappearing looks like weakness. People are told to post more, speak more, network more, stay visible at all costs, because if you're not constantly seen, you'll be forgotten. At least, that's what most people believe. Yet some of the most powerful individuals throughout history have used a completely different strategy. When pressure increased, they vanished. When attention became overwhelming, they stepped back. When everyone expected a reaction, they became silent. And strangely, their influence often grew stronger during their absence. Why? Because disappearance is not always retreat. Sometimes it's repositioning. And those who understand when to withdraw often gain an advantage that those constantly seeking visibility never even realize exists. Most people are terrified of disappearing, not physically, socially, professionally, psychologically. They fear being forgotten, replaced. The modern world has amplified this fear to an extraordinary degree. Every platform rewards visibility. Every algorithm encourages constant activity. Every expert seems to repeat the same message. Stay relevant, stay active, stay visible. As a result, many people develop an unhealthy relationship with attention. They begin treating visibility as proof of value. The more people see them, the more important they feel. The less attention they receive, the more uncertain they become. But high-level strategists have often viewed visibility very differently. They understand that attention is not always an asset. Sometimes attention becomes a burden, a target, a source of pressure. The moment everyone is watching you, your freedom begins shrinking. Every action is examined. Every mistake is noticed. Every weakness becomes easier to identify. Every decision attracts opinions. This is why strategic disappearance has appeared repeatedly throughout history, not as an act of surrender, but as an act of preservation, sometimes even an act of power. Consider what happens when someone is constantly available, constantly posting, constantly responding, constantly explaining themselves. Over time, people become accustomed to their presence. Familiarity increases. The absence creates more curiosity than the presence ever did. This reveals a powerful psychological principle. Human beings often value what becomes scarce, not necessarily because the thing itself changed, but because access changed. Scarcity attracts attention. Abundance often diminishes it. This principle influences markets, relationships, social dynamics, and status itself. The strategic individual understands this. They know that constant exposure can reduce impact, constant availability can reduce perceived value, and constant visibility can create unnecessary vulnerability. This does not mean disappearing is always beneficial. The timing matters, the purpose matters, the execution matters. Strategic disappearance is not avoidance. It is not fear. It is not running away from challenges. It is a calculated withdrawal designed to create a future advantage. Throughout history, influential figures have frequently disappeared during periods of transition, before major decisions, before significant changes, before important moves. While others were demanding immediate action, they were gathering information, preparing. The public often interpreted the silence as weakness. The reality was frequently the opposite, because reaction is easy. Withdrawal requires discipline. Most people react immediately to pressure, immediately to criticism, immediately to uncertainty. Strategic individuals understand that not every situation requires an instant response. Sometimes distance creates clarity. When you step away from constant noise, something changes. Emotions settle, battles become visible, priorities become clearer, decisions improve. This is one reason many powerful people deliberately create periods of isolation, not because they dislike people, because they understand the value of perspective. Perspective is difficult to maintain when surrounded by endless opinions, expectations, and distractions. The crowd creates pressure, distance creates insight. But there is an even deeper reason strategic disappearance can become so powerful, a reason that has less to do with scarcity and more to do with human psychology. Because when people can no longer observe you, they begin creating stories about you. And those stories often become far more influential than reality itself. That is where strategic disappearance stops being merely an absence and starts becoming a tool of perception. The moment people lose access to you, something unusual happens. Their attention doesn't disappear. Human beings have a natural tendency to fill informational gaps. When information is available, curiosity decreases. When information disappears, curiosity often increases. This is why strategic disappearance can become so powerful. Not because people forget you, because they start thinking about you. Consider how often this happens in everyday life. The person who constantly shares every detail of their life leaves very little to imagine. And uncertainty captures attention. People begin asking questions. What are they doing? Why did they step back? What's happening behind the scenes? Have they moved on to something bigger? Whether those assumptions are accurate becomes almost irrelevant. The important point is that attention remains active, and in many cases, it becomes even stronger. This principle has appeared repeatedly throughout history. Some of the most influential figures understood that constant visibility can weaken perception. When people see everything, they stop valuing access. When access becomes limited, perceived importance often increases. The absence creates mystery, and mystery has always been closely connected to influence, not because mystery is inherently powerful, but because people naturally attach significance to things they cannot fully understand. Observers assume nothing is happening. They mistake silence for inactivity, distant for weakness. Yet some of the most important transformations occur outside public view. Businesses are built quietly, skills are developed privately, strategies are refined in isolation. Reputations are often shaped long before the public ever notices the results. The average person seeks reassurance. The strategic person seeks positioning. Those are very different priorities. One focuses on being seen, the other focuses on becoming stronger. And strength developed away from public attention often becomes more resilient because it was built without the pressure of performance, without the need to impress, without the distraction of managing perception. Ironically, many people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to appear successful. The strategic individual spends that energy becoming successful. One invests in image, the other invests in capability. Over time, the gap becomes impossible to hide. And when the individual eventually returns, the results often speak louder than any explanation ever could. This is the final lesson of strategic disappearance. It is not about escaping the world. It is about refusing to let the world dictate your development. There are moments when visibility creates opportunity, but there are also moments when visibility becomes noise. Knowing the difference is a skill that separates those who react to circumstances from those who quietly shape them. Because sometimes the strongest move is not stepping forward, it's stepping back long enough to build something nobody expects. The modern world teaches people to remain visible at all times, to constantly update, explain, react, and perform. But strategic individuals understand that continuous visibility is not always an advantage. Sometimes distance creates perspective, sometimes silence creates curiosity, and sometimes disappearing from view is exactly what allows real growth to occur. Because the goal is not to be constantly seen, the goal is to become impossible to ignore when you return. Have you ever stepped away from people, social media, or a situation and come back stronger because of it? What changed during that period of absence? Share your experience in the comments, because some of the most important chapters in a person's life are written when nobody is watching.